Dearest fantasy readers, welcome to the Dear Fantasy Reader podcast, where two best friends, Hannah and Karen, travel through the pages of our favorite romantasy novels. Join us as we take flight through the world of the Empyrean series, diving deep into the chapters, exploring characters, scenes, theories, foreshadowing, and more, taking what we've learned from the second book, Iron Flame, to reread and re-experience the first.
With that content warning and spoiler alert, we'll be covering anything and everything Empyrean series to this date and any content Rebecca Yarros has given us. Also, due to the nature of these books, this podcast is rated R in content and language.
As Rebecca Yarros says, readers who may be sensitive to these elements, please take note and prepare to enter Basgiath War College. A quick reminder, we now have a Patreon. It is one of the best ways you can help support us so we can continue investing the time and resources needed to create high-quality deep dive content. And you get some awesome perks too, including early access to episodes, giveaways, behind-the-scenes content, monthly live Q&As, access to an exclusive Discord channel, a personalized note from Karen and myself, and even more coming so soon. You can check out the full list of benefits for each tier in the link down in our show notes.
If you are not able to subscribe right now, there are still plenty of ways to support us. Leaving a review wherever you listen to the show makes a huge difference.
Also, we just released a bonus episode on the new Xaden POV bonus chapter, so if you haven't watched it already, we will link it down in the show notes for you. Now, time for our summary report of chapters 24 and 25 from our personal scribe informant, Karen.
Violet wakes up in the infirmary to Xaden sitting in front of her, finally speaking to her after weeks, and she confronts him about seeming scared by their kiss. He says it was a mistake. He is setting a boundary and no longer talking about it. Oh, and that he will be taking over everything when it comes to Violet. The next day, they take to the sparring mat and he has her disarm each of his daggers. Not just any daggers, short-bladed daggers with Tearish runes on them, special made just for Violet. Oh, swoon. February flies by and Violet still hasn't manifested her signet power, and they are mere weeks away from squad battle. Xaden pulls Violet for more training, and Dane has the audacity to criticize him for not allowing Violet time to wield. So Xaden has Violet practice at that very moment to prove that they have been. On the way to flight training, Xaden and Violet run into Commandant Pancheck, Colonel Atos, and Violet's mom, General Sorengale. She chastises Violet for not manifesting any signets, and Colonel Atos asks to study Andarna. Violet tells them Andarna would not be down with that. General Sorengale calls Xaden and his questionable loyalty out, and he reminds her he resolved those questions years ago. Xaden expresses his surprise that Violet isn't close with her mother like he thought, and Violet explains that she is used to her mother ignoring her and barely tolerating her existence. They make it to the flight field, and Xaden explains that he, Violet, and their 3 dragons are all going to learn how to fly better together. Flash forward, and the cadets have reached the last of the mat challenges for squad battle, and Violet's squad is 7th out of 24 squads. Commandant Pancheck announces the last challenge. Their mission is to find and acquire, by any means necessary, the one thing that would be the biggest advantage to their enemies regarding the war effort, without their squad leaders. Violet's squad elects Imogen as their new leader, but as they brainstorm, they look to Violet for advice. Violet formulates a plan. They will break into her mother's office. The squad uses their signet powers to successfully steal an up-to-date map of all current outposts of Navarian wings. When they present it to the professors, absolute mayhem breaks out.
I can't wait to get into this set of chapters.
Oh, it's so good.
So good, especially that last moment. I can't wait to get to it. So, drum roll, dragon riders, as we are officially disarming a shadow daddy and stealing a map for squad battle.
Oh my gosh. Disarming a shadow daddy. We love it. We love this journey for us. Okay, well, we pick up immediately where we left off in the Healer's Quadrant Infirmary after Jack and Violet's sparring match, where he nearly killed her, but not before Violet poisoned him with oranges. And I love how right off the bat, Xaden says, "You turned oranges into a weapon, Violence." Like, that's crazy, but he can't argue with results.
No, he really can't. And honestly, it was so clever. We should have saw it coming. She has a tendency to utilize her poisoning skills, but it was so good. And I agree with Xaden here when he points out that if Violet just hadn't told Riddick that she'd given Jack the oranges, Jack could have just died. And then literally that would have saved so many lives. But at the same time, it's like for the greater good, because he's just one domino in the eventual fall of Navarre, which will eventually save lives, but still.
It's such a good point. As much as we hate Jack, and we hate Jack, he is important to the story.
He is. And it also is just another example of Violet wanting to avoid killing someone, and quite frankly, they didn't deserve it. Even after all he has done, she still doesn't want him dead. A testament to her character. But still, the moment I read the very first read that she told Riddick, I said, "Why did you tell him?" And now we know why he had to stay alive. Would have been so easy for Rebecca just to let him die right then.
Right.
I knew something was going to happen.
Did Riddick tell somebody?
Yeah.
Why didn't Riddick just keep it to himself?
Unless someone overheard. Violet also gets a chance here to call Xaden out for not speaking to her for weeks. Similar to Dane, though Dane, he loses more points. Xaden does lose some points for me here. Some. Mm-hmm. It's clear here, though, that these characters are early 20s. Of course, their communication and conflict resolution skills would not be thoroughly developed. And I think that Xaden's are more so than Dane's. But truth be told, Xaden is older, and he's been through way more. But I just think it's important that we consider that.
Younger 20s communication style for sure here. Oh, I hate that he felt like he shouldn't talk to her about it, but you said he lost some points for you. He doesn't lose as many points for me, I think, just because I understand why he felt like he shouldn't talk to her more than I understood why Dane wasn't talking to her.
Yeah, 100%. It's only slight, and I think I just am only doing that really so I can balance out how much I defend Xaden throughout all of our episodes. But he, just to try and be fair. But he does say later that he has loved her since their first kiss. And I think that was in retrospect. So, in this point, he's likely realized he has some sort of feelings for her and got scared and was in denial, thinking the best thing to do with all of his secrets and responsibilities is to distance himself from her. I get it. I didn't care necessarily to read that.
Yeah, he was definitely scared in this moment.
Yeah.
And we learned this later, but he's never been out of control before. And so this is scary for him.
Yeah.
It must be terrifying for him as somebody who's so used to being in control and not emotionally charged. I get it. I'm a defender over here.
You've convinced me.
Yeah.
No points are lost.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Oh my goodness. But I also think that he believes that she may have only been kissing him because she was influenced by Taryn's emotions. I don't know, but I think he believes that he needs to ignore their feelings for each other because of their future.
Yeah, that part's true.
He even goes on to say getting involved, even on a physical level, is a colossal blunder.
That part's true. I totally think he knew that it was her intentions at that point.
I forgot.
But then, like, can he see? It depends on the scope that he was able to read her thoughts, so we're told.
Yeah.
But can he see the intentions and the reason behind the intentions? Because if he was only getting the intention that she just, wanted him, maybe he can't see if that was Taryn or, yeah, that's fair.
Or, since he mentions even on a physical level, maybe he just thinks that she wants something physical.
That's true.
Not how much more deeply she is.
Oh, that's true, because doesn't
feeling.
Liam say that he's used to either every woman wants to fuck him or they hate him?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think she made it abundantly clear, she herself, especially because she says that she has been trying to get him to kiss her again. So yeah, maybe he's like actually starting to fall and catch feelings, and he's afraid she doesn't have feelings. She just wants sex. My heart. You get more points. You're not negative. You're positive points now, Zayden. I'm so sorry. Wait.
We didn't know you felt this way.
Okay, well, that's what I'm telling myself. That was his hesitancy there. And you're right. Like, he does mention they are tethered together for the rest of their lives. So that's got to be, it's not like your typical friends with benefits. That is all of the strings attached. There's no way to not have those, quite literally all bonds attached. Then he tells her that he is taking over everything when it comes to her. And I don't like the tone that I perceived this as. Like, the delivery was not, I wasn't crazy about it. But I do agree with his reasoning, because as much as Vi's sparring training is beneficial, and we come to learn in Iron Flame, it does help her against Kat to not just have training from Xaden. Rhee's a first year, just like Violet. And Xaden is the best fighter in the Quadrant. So really, like, it's about time he did step up and train her.
Oh, yeah. It's very necessary for her to grow as she continues on in this school. Okay, in person, if somebody said that they were taking over everything when it comes to me, I would be like, no, you're not.
Who are
Get
you?
the ick. I would never speak to them again. But when Xaden says it, it's so hot.
There were quite a few lines, though, in this set of chapters that Xaden delivered exquisitely that did have me fanning myself. We're gonna get there. So we flash forward to them sparring on a day when flight lessons are canceled, and we find out that Xaden had custom daggers made for Violet, which are smaller and more manageable, that have Tyrish runes on them. And at this point, on my first read, I had no idea what runes were until I got to Iron Flame. But I think that this scene is so sweet and so steamy. We know that he had the daggers themselves custom made by someone, but now we know that he weaved the runes on them himself. And that is so freaking sweet. I love magical romantic gestures.
Oh, I love how you clarified, not just romantic gestures. I love magical romantic gestures. Oh my goodness. I knew what runes were, but only because of the show WandaVision. Oh, but they're usually kind of like more witchy, like they're witches in that
Yeah.
show. So I didn't know what the context would be for them here. I just kind of thought they were like more like ancient markings from Irish culture.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the context we're given. And technically they are, right? We just didn't know that they were magical and did anything. And now we know that runes are strands of magic pulled from a wielder's power, woven into geometric patterns for specific uses, and then placed into an object for either immediate work or usage at a later date. I looked up the definition so I could fully explain this properly. And of course, they are part of Tirish culture that was banned after unification, to the point where Violet calls them mythical here. So she doesn't even know that they are actually real. Interesting in a world where she knows magic is real, but doesn't know that the runes are. But we learn that these daggers specifically that he gives her are very much so active, some of which we know the action they were tempered for. 2 of them. One being a variation of an unlocking rune with an element of need, which Professor Trissa tells us an iron flame can be used by someone without lesser magic. This was setting up for the interrogation chamber, where Violet is able to unlock the door without the key or access to her dragon's powers. Xaden also tells her if she had made it to the forge at Basgiath, then it would have gotten her in. So that was his initial intention behind making it. And this context is so important here because it tells us that at this point, Xaden had intended to share at least some of the rebellion secrets with her. And then the second one we know about is the one with the intertwined V's, which was tempered specifically to protect Violet from Kat's mind work gift. So long as Violet has this dagger on her body, Kat couldn't use her mind work to manipulate her emotions. Again, Xaden was thinking ahead here, and he explains to her that, quote, I figured she'd find a way to make my life difficult for breaking the agreement, and that would inevitably involve you. I think these are the only 2 that we know about the significance of so far, but I cannot wait to find out the other ones.
First of all, the runes are so cool, and that he was able to weave them with specific intentions in mind, like Kat. Because the other one makes a little bit more sense to me of how he would share that, but yeah, let's not let Kat manipulate your emotions. I'm going to give this to you so far in advance. That's just so cool to me. Even though Xaden is actively trying to deny his feelings for Violet, he's just already thinking about this.
I know. Well, and I think that there's a reality in which that could have been platonic because she's going to go wherever he goes, right? So they were bound, and maybe he thought that could happen sooner rather than later.
True.
But interesting timing, and I definitely think there's a layer of sentiment here.
Would Kat have been coming after Violet so hard if it wasn't a romantic thing? If they were just tied because of their dragons, that would have nothing to do with Kat. So
exactly.
We always mention how great Rebecca is at Easter eggs, but I love that we are getting all of this set up to have payoff in Iron Flame, and I'm sure there's going to be more that pays off in the books to follow.
I can't wait. It's what makes it so fun to go back through this, right?
So fun.
That and Violet and Xaden's flirty banter. The perfect balance. There are some moments on this mat that, again, had me flushing. Okay, I'm going to read you just a little bit.
Can I handle it?
Well, you tell me, because Xaden says, there are a dozen of these daggers strapped to my body, so start disarming me. Unless you don't know how to handle an opponent on top of you. And if so, that's a whole other issue. But it's really Violet that comes in here for me because she says, I know how to handle you on top of me. He lowers his mouth to my ear. He says, you won't like what happens if you push me. And Violet says, or maybe I will.
Oh my gosh.
The way that she is so unashamedly just like, come at me, bring it on.
You're in a room full of people.
Imagine what this looks like. They're just like whispering to each other. Smart. And, Violet is very clear about her intentions. So I don't think he had to read them here. But right after this, she thinks, I don't care if the entire Quadrant is watching if that means he'll kiss me again.
She doesn't care that there's all these people around.
She gives no fucks.
But,
cares.
Same.
Yeah, same.
Oh my goodness.
And it's so fun because this sort of banter that they're doing, like whispering to each other while they're sparring, we eventually get to see when they start speaking into each other's minds. And that is so fun and honestly is one of my favorite parts about their relationship dynamic. And I really hope, even though the stakes are even higher in Onyx Storm and tension is high in other ways, that we still get to keep some sort of balance of this flirtatious banter from them.
Right. I mean, it's obviously our favorites. You can see us get giggly and like barely able to breathe when we're talking about it.
All parts, though, I think I get equal. Well, I don't think I could say equally. I get really excited about theories and Easter eggs, but there's just something that hits different about how
we get excited about it. We're not
enthusiasm.
Giddy about it.
But that's what's so fun about this series and romantasy. And in true Rebecca Yarros fashion, we get another time jump into March.
There's been so many time jumps the past couple of chapters.
There really has. And honestly, she's got a lot to cover and a lot of time to get through for Violet's first year to be able to get her to her second to set up for Iron Flame. But yeah, I'm like, wait, I'm getting whiplash. But we do know that during this time, Violet spent it fight training with Xaden, weight training with Imogen, pushing for Xaden to kiss her again. Can't fault you there, girl. So she's been busy.
In the words of a young philosopher, Sabrina Carpenter, you can't blame a girl for trying.
How did I know where you were going with that?
I love her.
Same. And Violet's also really frustrated all throughout this time, thinking that she hasn't manifested her signet yet, which she has. She just doesn't know. And she says that she hopes it means that it will be something different from the others so far, something useful and meaningful like Brennan's, which clues us into how conflicted she will become about her signet being lightning and being destructive later. She wants something that saves people, not one that is destructive and kills. And of course, we'll go deeper into this when we get to her finally realizing this. But she does go on to be useful and meaningful in so many more ways than she can imagine right now, and saves so many lives, just not quite in the way that she expected or wanted at the time.
Definitely. Like, we've talked about how she never goes in for the kill. We just saw that with Jack Barlow. And in the epigraph for chapter 24, Brennan even tells Mira that Violet has to enter the Scribe Quadrant because she wouldn't be able to take the death blow. So, makes sense. This is very in character for her to want something non-destructive.
Yeah, and it also shows that that's how she's always been.
The waiting, though. Waiting says she doesn't know that she's already manifested her signet, so she thinks she's waiting. And it's the worst, obviously, because She's watching all of her friends get their signets and other cadets literally burning or freezing to death for the first time manifesting. And a little scary that whenever you do, it could also kill you.
And that also made me think, I'm blaming it on Xaden because he didn't kiss her again. I mean, he does, but she's so preoccupied.
Damn it, Xaden.
Not in a position to like let loose, but really that's what does it for her, right? So if he had done that again,
That's what does it for me.
And then we learn about squad battle. So they have to do the gauntlet again. Then they have a wielding challenge, a sparring challenge, flight maneuvers, and a final mystery task. And the squad pretty much thinks that Violet's going to be the one slowing them down in pretty much every area. None of these areas at this point are her forte, but she really shows where she excels in the final challenge, which I can't wait to get into. So close, so close. So the squad is discussing squad battle challenges, and Dane says to Violet, a signet would be great, you know, if you could maybe make that happen. And I guess that teasing her is what he thinks is the move here. And Violet even points out that, like, it seems like he can't decide on how to treat her. And she thinks at least he's finally being supportive. The bar is in fucking hell. Because he's pointing out something she's lacking, even in a teasing way. This is the most support he's shown. That is so sad.
Oh my gosh.
So sad.
Whenever I read that she said, well, at least he's being supportive, I was like, this is support? Girl, what do you mean?
The same girl that was over here like, Xaden's not training me. Xaden's not doing what he can to help. What do you mean? She has such a blind spot when it comes to Dane. And we see right through him. And then the boys get feisty here because Xaden wants to take Violet to train, and Dane is arguing. They bring Violet into it, making her show that she has improved her wielding skills. And I've said before that I wish we saw more of Violet using her lesser magic, but I realize now why we don't see it as much. The way that Rebecca sets up her magic system, it takes a lot of time and practice to even use lesser magic. They don't just wave their hand and work on the pronunciation of spells. When wielding lesser magic here to pick up the pocket watch, Violet describes it as heavy, like physically taxing on them.
There's actually more mention of the lesser magic than I remember reading about. I guess I just kind of glossed over it because it must not have been as interesting to me. I do think it's interesting, but I'm just reading it the first time. I guess I was like, okay, when does the good stuff happen? But you're right. They have to work at it to get better. So maybe we'll see them use it more as they get older and they've been doing it longer where it's not as taxing or heavy. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I also glossed over quite a bit of how much lesser magic is mentioned. I just think because they didn't get to use it in ways that I found as exciting. Like, it's not as exciting for me to be told about all of these limitations, but you're right. Like, it is building up, hopefully, to them being able to use it more.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Xaden is taking Violet out to practice flight maneuvers, and he holds the door for her like it's second nature, shocking Violet, who thinks this is at complete odds with everything that she's come to know about him. And Xaden explains this, saying, "Old habits die hard. My father taught me that." And Violet says here that it's like she's meeting him for the first time. And I think that that's partly true, right? Like, this was a huge moment of vulnerability for him, showing he's opening up and being himself around her. Also, though, just how close he and his dad were, how much he still grieves his loss, all of that is a whole new side that she is getting to see of him and so much more authentic.
In a world of boys, he's a gentleman.
Got love struck straight to my head.
Oh my goodness. I was surprised that she was surprised at him holding a door open because I don't feel like that's very out of character for him so far. I mean, she's
Really?
had this. I don't think he goes around holding the door for every single person that goes
I don't think
by,
it's
but
typical for anyone in the writer's quadrant to show that sort of consideration for other people around. Like,
am I just a Southern girl?
It's military, right? We have to remember this is a war college. And so not only that, but the only times, like, this is the first time she's picking up on him being semi-affectionate. Like, we noted when she was in shock, like, how careful and gentle he was with her, but she wasn't registering that. She was in shock. So this is one of those moments where it's like, he was showing a level of consideration for her and just, like, being a nice person out in the open. I do think that was quite a bit out of character for him at this point. Now we know so much more about how he is later, and I think that does bleed into a reread in our perception. But yeah, I think for Violet at this point, she's like, I thought you were only hardened around the edges. And we do see him harden back up almost instantly after he says this, and she had asked him more about this, and he says, boundaries, Violet. So, like, he's still not fully able to open up, but at least here it's super apparent that he's being vulnerable and that he's really, really affected by the loss of his dad. And then they run into Commandant Panchek, Colonel Atos, and General Sorengale. And the very first thing that Violet's mom says to her after over 5 months of not seeing her is, I hear you're having trouble wielding. Damn.
What a supportive and caring mother.
Like, the kindest, the most affectionate.
Like, love that for Violet. I know we were told when she was first entering the writer's quadrant that her mother can't really acknowledge her for the 3 years that she will be at Basgiath, but, like, damn, she couldn't, like, sneakily offer her advice or at least, like, some support. I mean, Mira did.
Even just not saying anything would have been better. I know that that would have been cruel, but, like, I think that that would have not been as abrupt. And Violet is super affected by this. She says she steps back, like she could give some distance to how that makes her feel. If she just wouldn't have said anything, it could have been better. And I think it's a little different for Mira because Mira, one, has always, like, had a closer bond with Violet. General Sorengale, to our understanding, has always seemed, at least to Violet's perception, very distant and icy, especially after their father passed. But she says, she has this conversation later with Mira, that their dad was the affectionate one. I think that's why she bonded so deeply, and we see so much of her dad in Violet versus whatever you want to call General Sorengale's personality and her tactics here, which I think is really important to consider, the fact that Violet's dad is a scribe. You'd think he's the one who was very don't show emotions. And that's what General Sorengale is really putting off. It's interesting. I just, would she talk to any cadet like this? Or is Violet actually being treated worse as her daughter in the name of treating her in an unbiased way? Because that's really what General Sorengale first said, is you're not getting any special benefits. No shit, but she's also not getting, like, the bare minimum from a leader of the college.
I don't think she's being worse to Violet. She's probably like that with anybody she would come across. Or maybe she is because she just knows Violet better, so she would know what to say that really affects Violet.
Not in a positive way, though. That's not encouraging at all.
I know.
That's what's confusing about, like, how we know now she really wanted her to live and really, like, believed in her this whole time. Nothing about this screams, I believe in you.
No.
Or, I'm your mother. And Violet explains then that she has the best shields in her year. So she's like, yeah, but I am excelling here. So she had a chance to be encouraging, but instead responds, with a dragon like Tarn, I would certainly hope so. If not, all that incredible, enviable power will have been squandered. She's basically saying Taryn would have been wasted on Violet. General Sorrengail did herself no favors trying to seem like she wanted what was best for Violet.
She really didn't. And it could be because of the present company of the Commandant and Colonel Atos that she's being, like, such a hard ass. But, like, it's such a bad look for her.
It is, and Colonel Atos even smiles in sympathy at Violet. So it's like, even he knows that it's harsh.
Yeah.
And then Commandant Panchek doesn't even acknowledge Violet or Zayden's existence, which is like, you guys could have just kept moving. But then she becomes passive-aggressive, saying that the company Violet is forced to keep is questionable, talking about Zayden. And I get that this is her likely saving face, like you just said, but the fact that she says this to him after giving him those scars herself and cashing in the favor to protect Violet seems so sinister. Like, Zayden's response was classy with the right amount of sass, because how dare she say that? He says, I always felt that we resolved those questions years ago, which he tells Violet he was referring to already paying the price for his loyalty, which we know now were the scars and the favor Lilith cashed in. How dare she say this to him?
It's so jarring, honestly, especially when the children, he's an adult, but, you know, he was the child in this situation, shows way more maturity than the adults.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, she didn't need to say this to Violet. That was absolutely unnecessary. And even worse, right in front of Zayden. I agree that she was saving face, but...
Well, I also think it was a warning of sorts to Violet, right? But it's strange to warn her to stay away from him when literally he made a deal with General Sorrengail to protect her.
Right.
I'm trying to give her anything I can here, and none of it makes it any better. Even the way that she says, and dismisses Violet in the same demeaning way, saying, do see if you can master some kind of signet, Cadet Sorrengail. You have a legacy to live up to. When Violet first saw General Sorrengail approach, she says, Mom. And at the end, she says, yes, General. And Violet says this cost her the confidence she spent nearly 8 months building. It's one thing for General Sorrengail to not be encouraging, but why knock her down when she's already against all other odds? And Zayden's caught off guard by this whole interaction, specifically stating his surprise that Violet didn't share her Feathertail gift with her mom, assuming they were close. He says, didn't realize it was quite like that between the two of you. So we have to remember that Zayden made that deal, and I imagine would have read General Sorrengail's intentions when they were making it, that they were likely pure in her intention to protect Violet, and he assumed that equates to a close relationship for them. But now he probably realizes that Violet is even more trustworthy than he may have thought initially. She is not telling her mom anything at this point.
Nor should she, apparently.
No.
And also, Zayden just implied that he and his father were close. So I think this is partially why he was so surprised that her and her mom were not close, and that General Sorrengail's actually really cold towards Violet.
Oh, yeah. Well, I thought of this as well. We just got this vulnerable moment with Zayden finding out just how hurt he is about losing his father. And then this person who had his father killed, or at least played a major role in that, walks up and has the audacity to be even more cruel to him. That just full scene of frustration over here.
Yeah. And, like, I can give General Sorrengail a pass. Kind of. A little one. For Violet. But, yeah, she just really lost me with how rude she was to Zayden.
But you know what? We got a really nice balance to the heaviness of this chapter right at the end, and I just love it. Zayden explains that they, meaning all three dragons, Violet and himself, are flying today because they all have things to learn. Violet needs to learn how to keep her seat. Zayden needs to figure out why it's so hard for her to keep her seat. And Darna needs to learn how to keep up. Taryn needs to learn how to share his space in a tighter flight formation, and Sigale needs to learn, or at least practice, how to follow, since she has been the most powerful dragon in formation, and hence the lead for 3 years now. This is such a cute little scene.
I love it. I love this part of the chapter, and it was the perfect balance after that heavy, like we were just saying.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite thing about it, though, is that he's not just focusing on Violet's need for training, and he's really focusing on everything that they all need to learn to become a better unit, because it's now the 5 of them for life.
And I think this is really cool to see because we see examples of Xaden being a really great leader in more ways than just as a wing leader. He's thinking ahead about the daggers that Violet will need. He has the responsibility of both all of the March ones and the Revolution, and he's still managing to do all of this in the now work alongside thinking ahead and planning for the future. It's actually quite impressive. I may or may not be in love with this man. We do also get this really cute moment where Taryn chuffs laughing about Sigale needing to learn how to follow him. And I love getting these moments of the dragons interacting, which we don't really get a lot of because we can't hear most of their thoughts. Only the 3 main dragons when they choose to let their riders hear their communication. But I also want to point out here that Violet sees this and says, dragon relationships are absolutely incomprehensible. And Xaden responds, yeah, you should try a human one sometime. Just as vicious, but less fire. He should try a human relationship that he describes as vicious. That was an Easter egg for Kat.
Ooh.
Talk about thinking ahead. Rebecca?
Oh my gosh. That makes so much sense.
Because remember, they tried out the relationship, the betrothal, but then they hated each other. It was vicious.
Oh my gosh, we've got so many more cat hints than I expected.
Oh yeah, I did not catch them even on a second read, but then the third I was like, no, Rebecca knew where this was going, especially with the dagger. She was setting up for Kat. Love it. We've got more Easter eggs than we can fit in our basket at this point. Keep them coming, though. I love it. So we make it to the final challenge in squad battle. This chapter jumps around so much, but it's fun. They're tasked with bringing back something that would be the most valuable to Navarre's enemies, all without their squad leader. And it made me realize, speaking of leadership skills, that I can't think of a single situation where Dane has been even a bare minimum leader, shown any kind of leadership skills outside of telling the squad to like hush in formation or that they can't skip class when they joke about it.
Yeah, I cannot think of one either. Like, he keeps them in line because he's a fuddy-duddy and doesn't like fun. And he's such a rule follower. But, like, haven't seen anything that makes him earn the wing leader title that he gets in his 3rd year.
No. Why is it always Dane? We're told he's a good leader. We're told he's a best friend. Like, I don't understand it. Yeah. We get to see it with Ree a lot in Iron Flame, so it's not like there aren't moments where this could have been shown, but I guess all of those moments were supposed to show, like, how not great he was toward Violet at this point. But it's still like, oh, anyways. So without the squad leader, they put Imogen in charge, but none of them can think of anything they can realistically steal until Violet comes up with the idea of breaking into her mother's office. And I love this whole section of the chapter here where they plan and utilize each other's signet powers to their advantage. Y'all know I'm a powers girly. So this is my favorite part of fantasy, seeing the powers in action. I love it. I love it.
This is actually one of my favorite moments that we've seen outside of the Xaden and Violet relationship, especially since some people in the squad were talking earlier about Violet slowing them down in other challenges. I just love that she gets a chance to shine. while coming up with this idea, and we got to see so many signets like come out to play.
Oh, we're going to walk through them. Quinn can astral project. That is so badass. That's so cool. Can you imagine what it looked and felt like to first manifest astral projecting as your signet? Literally separating from your physical form? That would freak me out so much.
Oh my gosh. Especially the very first time. Because I'm kind of just picturing Quinn walking with Imogen to class. But then, like, her physical body stopping and her, like, astral form continually walking with Imogen. And then people are just like, what the heck?
That's cool.
That's just kind of how I envision it happening for the first time in my head. Obviously, we don't know how that happened.
Does she physically walk out of her body, or can she just like teleport her astral projected body to a specific point? Or maybe that's how it evolves.
I think her body stays wherever.
Yeah, it does.
Because Riddick says to her astral form, "You are so fucking creepy." It's such a cool signet, and it's different from anything that we have learned about yet.
That's what I love about learning about the signets. It's like, what all is possible in this world? And then we find out Imogen can mind wipe. And I'm so confused, one, why this power isn't mentioned or that we know of utilized more. And I wonder how she found out that she could do this. Like, did she touch someone and accidentally hit delete? And that's how she figured it out. But like, I guess I don't know how it visually looks to her when she sifts through, if she sifts through memories. It's really interesting to think about.
Even the first time doing it, how would she know? It's not like the person she took a memory from could tell her.
Oh, okay. I think we're going farther than Rebecca might have thought of these. But it's really cool. I started thinking about each one. Yeah. It also makes me wonder if she can give memories back or can only erase them. And I ask this because if she has erased Violet's memories in this book, which Rebecca sneakily said in an interview was an interesting thought after she was asked about it, we wouldn't know that she's done this unless Imogen could give them back or we get a different point of view. I guess Violet could be told that it was done. We just wouldn't get to experience the memory on page if that was the case.
Yeah, I actually like that idea of her being able to give the memories back, because that would be wild. And after seeing Rebecca answer that question, I 100% believe that Imogen has erased a memory of Violet's at one point or another.
Oh, yeah. I'm kind of nervous for how that's going to play out and if it's going to look bad on Xaden. I don't need him to take any more after the end of Iron Flame. I need him to be in good graces as much as possible. Another signet we learn about is that Heaton can breathe underwater. And I wonder how they found this out. Because you don't really test something like that when you're underwater.
This is like making me want to see how each of these characters manifested for the very first time.
Right. Again, another novella option for you, Rebecca. It's so cool to think about. And Rebecca does this thing where she sets up signets so that she can use them for specific scenes. So she thinks about what she needs to happen at X spot in the plot and will then assign signets to characters like that. And so I'm wondering if Heaton's ability to breathe underwater might come into play when they visit the Isle Kingdoms.
Ooh, we'll see.
But if so, you heard it here first. Otherwise, Heaton's literally left to babysit Quinn's body. What do you use that signet for? We do see that Emery's, he can control wind, which is a common signet like most all main elements. His does come into play in this scene. I believe throwing a guard into the wall. So it will come up. It will. Nadine, though, on the topic of signet usage, can unweave wards, but she fulfills her usage, getting into General Sorrengail's office, and then that's all she was needed for, because she dies in just a few chapters.
There's nothing Rebecca is better at than making us love a character and then killing them off.
You were right about that. I didn't care for Nadine, though. She was
No.
really hateful toward the marked ones and didn't live long enough to grow on me. But yeah, Rebecca is definitely an expert at that. So using all of their newly manifested signets, our squad makes it back to squad battle mere minutes before their time is up, and Violet presents the map. The professors are in disbelief when they find out that they got it from General Sorrengail's office, and mayhem breaks loose. And I cannot express how deeply I love this moment that Violet and Xaden share, where everyone and everything else is in chaos. And Violet says, "I ignore it all," as Xaden tilts one corner of that beautiful mouth and tips an imaginary hat to me, bowing his head for a heartbeat before bringing his gaze back to hold mine. Satisfaction fills every ounce of my being as I smile up at him. It doesn't matter how the vote comes down. I've already won. I have chills. There are a few scenes throughout these books that I feel like Rebecca sprinkled narcotics into, and this is one. I can picture it so vividly.
Oh, it was so good. And Violet's whole internal monologue there was actually my favorite quote from this set of chapters. Perfection, no notes.
Absolute perfection.
Obsessed.
And it reminds me so much, as I was reading it, I was just playing Dress by Taylor Swift, of course, in my head. Specifically, our secret moments in a crowded room. They've got no idea about me and you. And then I realized that just 2 lines later, made your mark on me a golden tattoo. This is not a song on Rebecca Yarros' inspiration playlist, but it should have been. And I feel like it was inadvertently inspiration.
Wait.
Matches perfectly.
I also was thinking of a Taylor Swift song. A different one, though. And I love that the Swifties in us were both thinking of Taylor songs. But I just kept thinking of, "Where's the trophy? He just comes running over to me."
From So High School. Yeah, that fits.
Yeah.
But it's a reverse because it's Violet's trophy, but she's looking at him. Everybody's watching her, but she's looking at you. Okay, so we've got multiple Taylor Swift songs wrapped in one. And you know what? None of those are on Rebecca's playlist. But Rebecca is a Swiftie, so she knows all these songs. All of them fit so well. Kind of scary well.
Oh, Taylor is writing the diary of our lives.
And Violet and Xaden's.
She's just that good.
Well, speaking of our favorite moments and favorite quotes, let's head on over to the Healer's Quadrant to get a temperature check on our favorite characters and go over those moments and quotes. For you this week, who was hot, Karen?
So for me, it was our second squad as a whole, because I just loved how they all brought something to the table and worked together. Oh, it was so fun to read.
Well, I think that was actually our first time really getting to see signets at play, which, all right, I have to agree with you there. For me, I said Violet takes it for me. Through and through. The way that she thinks outside of the box, she is really coming into her own as a writer here. But not just that, she's also redefining what kind of skills it takes to be a powerful writer. As much as she's frustrated about not manifesting her signet, even though she has, we really get to see that she has powers in other areas that really are necessary for an effective team that has these signet powers that can be so badass. But if you don't have strategy in there, you know, this whole mind of a scribe, heart of a writer, we got to see that in action without her signet power in play. And I really appreciate that. I like how that kind of ties in with yours as well.
Yeah.
You're so not.
I've been giving her grace, but this time it's gotta be General Sorrengail. for the reasons we talked about with her run-in with Violet and Xaden.
Yeah, I also added Atos, the father, for even asking about studying Andarna, which we saved for our foreshadowing and theories section. So we will be to that very shortly. But how dare he?
Yeah.
It seems like my hate apparently runs in the bloodline. My favorite moment was definitely Xaden and Violet's moment at the end of Squad Battle. Of course, hello, for all reasons we've discussed, but also on the sparring mat when Xaden and Violet are flirting with each other and Violet says, "I thought you said kissing me was a mistake." She thinks, "I don't care if the entire quadrant is watching if that means he'll kiss me again."
Whew.
And then he says it was, "I'm just teaching you that blades aren't the only way to disarm an opponent. Tell me, Violence, are you disarmed?" When I tell you this took me out, I love
Oh my gosh.
those he is great with these one-liners.
So good. Anyways, while you cool yourself off, my favorite moment was a little bit more wholesome.
That's okay.
And it may be cheesy. And I mentioned this with my hot, but my favorite moment was really just seeing the second squad work together, how Imogen took charge to get them organized, how Violet came up with the idea to steal something from her mother's office, all the details of the signets and the team bonding. Oh, it was just a great moment. Like I said, I loved reading this whole scene.
You're making me wonder if I've turned into more of the romance side of this book than the fantasy. Because, I'm supposed to be the power girly between the two of us, but I love to see that you're really giving the powerful moments their due.
I'm a big time fantasy girl too, though. So I already mentioned my favorite quote earlier. What was your favorite quote?
Well, I also mentioned a couple of mine as well already, but there was one more moment when Violet is explaining that General Sorrengail barely tolerates her because she isn't perfect like Brennan or a warrior like Mira. Xaden says, "She doesn't know you very well then." Violet moves right past this, but ma'am, this man basically just called you perfect and a warrior. Not to mention, he knows Brennan, so he would know.
Oh,
All right. Right?
Oh, I love that. I love the mention of because I forget that sometimes he does know Brennan.
He does.
Oh, that makes it even more meaningful.
It was such a wholesome moment, and I really feel like Violet should have appreciated it just a little bit more. But I'll appreciate it for her. It's fine.
We will swoon for her.
100%. I can't wait to swoon with her, but in the meantime.
Yeah.
Now let's stop by the Scribe Quadrant for our Epigraph Analysis.
Starting with chapter 24, I know you don't want to hear this, but sometimes you have to know when to take the death blow, Mira. It is why you have to be sure that Violet enters the Scribe Quadrant. She'll never be able to take a life. Page 70, the Book of Brennan. We mentioned this briefly earlier, but I had a thought on this because it's very interesting to me that he was like, you have to make sure that she doesn't become a writer. But up until last year, Violet becoming a writer wasn't even a discussion.
Right. And this is the first time, alongside Andarna, that someone has suspected that Violet may not become a scribe. And I wonder if this means that he knew his mom would try to force Violet to go to the writer's quadrant and not the scribe.
But does that mean Brennan knows? Well, he does know about the venom, but he didn't know all the way back then, I would think. So
No, I don't think that implies he knew about the venom.
We mentioned that maybe General Sorrengail didn't want Violet to become the top of the scribes because she would know all this stuff. Maybe that's why she didn't want Mira to get that award, because she would be too high and find out about all of the secrets that they're keeping.
Yeah. Well, I think that Brennan didn't have to know that. I mean, he knows his mom. She has high expectations, and she looks down on
Yeah.
scribes, even though she married one. And she wanted all Sorengales to be riders. She even says that. So I think he knew enough that she was going to try. I think that's what it implies, is that even without the additional context, he knew.
Oh, Brennan. Smart boy.
Now, chapter 25 reads, "The squad battle is more important than wing leaders will let on. They like to joke that it's a game, that it's just bragging rights for the squad leaders and the winning squad, but it's not. They're all watching. The commandant, the professors, the commanding officers. They're watching to see who will rise to the top. They're salivating to see who will fall." Page 77, the Book of Brennan. And I'm really not sure what to make of this epigraph, except to say that it's speaking on the brutality of the quadrant and how it isn't just about the system itself, that the system is upheld by people who are conditioned to buy into it. And their lust for seeing this like survival of the fittest idea realized. We can see how harsh this is.
Yeah.
But the people who are actually in it are also cheering for it to continue, salivating to see who will fall.
Ugh, it's like the gladiator battles where people would just go watch people fight to the death.
So dehumanized, right?
Yeah.
With that, it is time to join our riot as we take flight into our foreshadowing, overarching questions, and theories section, including some moments that stood out to us most during this reread and may spiral into some theories. Starting with Violet, when she says that their squad lost 2 of the new additions last week when the smaller one's signet manifested in battle brief, and they both froze to death in seconds, nearly taking out Riddick with the exposure too. He was treated for frostbite, but didn't have any permanent damage. Riddick's signet is ice wielding, so you would think that that wouldn't harm him.
You'd think that if he was over here like Elsa, the cold wouldn't bother him anyway.
You have like a Disney reference every episode. Similarly, the kid Vedi that manifests his signet of fire burned himself to death. So this shows us that you are not immune to your signet. Violet could still be harmed by lightning. And it also could be showing us what it looks like when you can't control your signet, that it can actually make you combust whatever your signet is, like we see with the fire. But I worry it is also implying that Riddick specifically might be harmed by ice in the future. We don't have to go there. That's okay. That's okay.
Please don't.
Keep moving on. And when Colonel Atos asks to study Andarna, as if a dragon would let them do that, we do get some information about Violet's father's feathertail research. Colonel Atos says, "We've had the scribes on it since threshing, and the only reference they can find in the archives about the power of feathertails is hundreds of years old, which is funny because I remember your father doing a bit of research about the Second Crovelin Uprising, and he mentioned something about feathertails, but we can't seem to find that tome." So the Crovelin Uprising stood out to me here, so I searched for it using Uprising in the Fourth Wing ebook. The only references to an uprising was the recent Tyrish rebellion, but it is mentioned once in Iron Flame, and it is the Second Crovelin Uprising, just like this one. When Violet is in the secret archives vault sifting through the books, which are all of the hidden knowledge, Auric says, "This shelf is all journals of the commanding generals of the riders. They used to be separate positions." And Violet responds, "Healers, infantry, or even scribes could be the general of the armies until about 200 years ago with the Second Crovelin Uprising. After that, the commander of the riders commanded all Navarre's forces." So because there's only 2 mentions between both books, this is one of those things that we don't have a ton of info on yet, but is definitely setting up to come into play in future books. It does tell us, though, the time frame of the Second Crowland Uprising, about 200 years ago. And that is where Violet's father found some sort of information about feathertails, which would have been the most recent outside of his own research. Then Violet tells them that she doesn't know where her father's research is, but she thinks to herself, I know exactly where his notes are, in the one location he spent the majority of his after-hours time. But there's something about Taryn's warning that makes me simply unable to tell them. I'm really confused at this point about where this could be, that, one, Violet's mother wouldn't have already checked to burn his things, because we know she's really particular about that. Two, that the scribes wouldn't have already checked when looking for this information that Atos specifically says that he had them look for. Three, that Violet wouldn't have gone to look for herself, knowing it could be important since she bonded a feathertail. I don't know where that would be. Part of me has wondered if it could be somewhere inaccessible for the reason of why she wouldn't have gotten it,
right?
Like the veil. But that is for sure somewhere that Violet would think was a big enough deal to mention here. And she says it's in the place he spent all of his after hours in. So clearly it was close enough for him to go there and back every day that wasn't suspicious. Regardless, I'm sure this is an Easter egg that Violet will find the tome that General Atos is referring to here with her father's research in the coming books.
Where is this research? I don't understand. And why was it a secret from her mother? I cannot wait for all of the puzzle pieces to fall together because I'm racking my brain.
Well, we knew part of this reread was gonna have some unanswered Easter eggs. As Rebecca says, she sprinkled some in that won't even come into play until the 5th book. But this one, I need it to be in the 3rd book. I can't wait like 2 or 3 years to find out about this research that has been egged like 15 times at this point. Like, we need it at this point.
Egged.
But this next one made me gasp. When talking to her mom, Violet thinks, her gaze skims the top of my head, and I know she's looking at the silver-tipped braid she thinks marks me as cursed, the hair she told me I was better off cutting. I did not realize that Violet's mom thinks of it as a curse. We've talked about the theory that her hair is silver because her mom consumed dragon eggshells when she was pregnant, but this completely crossed that off for me. This implies that her hair being silver is the result of something her mom thinks of as a curse. That would not be ties to a dragon. That would be an honor, not a curse, right? The only thing I can think of that Lilith would see as a curse is a connection to venom. And I genuinely believe at this point that Lilith was attacked by a venom when she was pregnant with Violet, and maybe the venom forced power into Lilith like Jack did to Violet. And that affected Violet's growth in the womb, changing her hair color and connecting her in some magical way to the venom. There's nothing else I can think of that Lilith would see as a curse.
Oh my gosh, I'm unsure. I was really loving the dragon eggshell theory, but this one makes a lot of sense too. So now I'm super unsure. I don't know which one I should choose to believe.
At this point, go with the one you want to believe. If it makes you feel better,
Dragon.
You can go with the dragon one. I cannot convince myself at this point, especially with Rebecca saying that Violet's going to grapple with the meaning of it. Those two things, the grappling and the curse, would not imply dragon shell, but go ahead. Believe it. It's okay.
But finding out that you are different or something happened, anything to make you that way could be hard to grapple with.
But it would be an honor to be connected to dragons, you know?
Yeah.
Then we also get more context about the size of crossbolts. When the squad is brainstorming things to steal for squad battle, Riddick says, a crossbolt would be deadly to any of our dragons in the hands of our enemies, and Quinn responds, it's too big. There's only one in the museum, and honestly, it's not even the bolt that's deadly, it's the launching system. So I realized that my search did not account for when the word is not hyphenated, and it is at certain points in the books and is not. So I found that Brennan actually got a bunch of them in Iron Flame in the deal he made with Takaris to allow the Griffin Flyers to come to Orisha, saying as long as each flyer we take brings a crossbolt with them. I think I looked over this because I thought of them as like handheld little weapons, and I didn't connect. I didn't understand their significance. This is way bigger than I thought.
If they are that big where they can't get them, how is a flyer taking a crossbolt with them?
All right, so that actually leads us to the next mention. The dragons carried them in their claws as the riders and the flyers were crossing like that mountain thing. They were patrolling, carrying all of them in their claws, which Taryn complained about basically being like treated like cattle. And then Brennan, after that, is standing on a bound stack of crossbolts when speaking to the riders and flyers, and Serena is described as climbing up that pile to stand with him. This was after the agreement, showing that we got the crossbolts, but also that they're large enough to stand on and to have climbed up. Now, remember, these are just the projectiles. These are not the launching systems. But clearly, this means that Orisha has a launching system as well, because Brennan says to ready the crossbolts when Mira and other dragons are coming to Orisha before they know if they're, friendly. So we have to imagine here that they're pretty large to be able to kill dragons and wyverns, who were described as larger than dragons, but not so big that the dragons can't carry a bundle of them in their claws.
Okay, I was thinking they were bringing the whole thing, the launching system too.
This would imply that Orisha does have a launching system.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense to me, because I was like, how are they carrying that?
Exactly. So again, we don't really get an exact descriptor for these.
Yeah.
And I don't believe we've seen them in use yet.
All I can imagine right now is a catapult, and I don't think it's that.
Another moment that stood out to me is that Violet finds an alloy-hilted dagger with a Tyrish rune on it on her mother's desk, thinking she must be using it as a letter opener. But this was one of those hints that Lilith knows about the venom and the runes. Now, Violet, in this same stretch, reads 2 missives on her mother's desk. The first one is from Major Callista Nema asking for reinforcements from Athben as they are being attacked outside the wards. This shows us that at least some of command were aware of venom attacks, and sets up both Athben being abandoned and how Colonel Atos sends Violet and the marked ones there to die, knowing that it was going to be abandoned. Yeah. The second one shows that there is unrest in Tyrandor, which we now know, but I wanted to point out specifically that it says, quote, knowing that due to Tyrandor's size, it provides the majority of our conscripts to replenish our front lines. We cannot afford to lose the support of the people again. This is important because once word spreads in Tyrandor about the revolution, then Navarre will lose most of its conscripts. They won't be able to defend themselves to the extent that they currently are. What's more, Violet thinks to herself after reading it that increasing spending on Tyrish outposts as a solution doesn't make a ton of sense because it holds our fewest numbers of outposts due to the natural barrier provided by the cliffs of Draelor, which are unscalable by griffins. So this is how we know that the attacks are from Benin, not the griffins. We get so much information in here. It's juicy. All so much foreshadowing. And she also thinks Tyrrendor should already be one of the safest provinces on the continent. Well, except Orisha. So this shows us that the revolution's base, being Orisha, is actually considered the safest place on the continent, geographically. And we know it is a well-maintained fortress.
It sounds like Rebecca was really setting this up so this seemingly non-existent revolution actually has a shot.
Exactly. I really think she was here. And finally, when they return to squad battle with the map, Violet says, a squadron first wing stole Kaori's handwritten manual on the personal habits and flaws of all active dragons. Kaori stays on the side of Navarre. So I think this means that Navarre will have the information of all of the dragons' weaknesses that join the revolution. And I think that this may be why Rebecca had Kaori choose to take Navarre's side.
I don't like that.
The justification for him choosing it, I believe, was, well, he needs to stay close to the Veil. But there's dragons in Orisha. Yeah. They have hatching grounds there. Why would he not want to go research these new grounds? You know? So
if he really cared about learning everything he could, you would think that he would really want to.
Unless Rebecca needed him to stay so that they had access to all of their flaws. A lot of info to drop on you all. This is how Rebecca does it. So we try and pick up as much as we can, but you catch new things every time.
Since there were no Dane touchy moments or any where we think that Xaden read Violet's intentions, that wraps up chapters 24 and 25. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to join us for our next episode where we will deep dive into chapters 26 and 27.
If you are looking for ways to support us so we can continue making high-quality content, please leave us a review, check out our Patreon, give us a follow on socials, and share to all of your Fourth Wing friends.
As always, we encourage you to email us all of your thoughts, theories, and suggestions. Drop them below if you are watching on YouTube or join us over on Discord.
Until next week, dearest fantasy readers, prepare yourselves for a flight to Montserrat as we continue our journey through the Empyrean series.